On October 7th, 2017, Lance Frisco competed in a ladder match at FaMniversary with his career on the line against Darren Dastardly. A match in which Frisco won, but despite that, was never seen in FAM again. Following the event, it wasn't for another 5 years until we saw Lance Frisco again. Few are aware of how Frisco got his mechanical limb. One freak accident at the FAM Royal Rumble completely tore his shoulder in half, and after a botched surgery at a local medical facility, it was looking like he was going to completely lose his right arm. Then, nothing short of a miracle happened, as Lance was offered an opportunity that would change his life forever. Word spread fast about the tragedy that had overcome the FAM superstar, and not even 48 hours removed from his match with Dastardly, Frisco was approached by a company that not many people knew too much about at the time, B-Dynamic. It was a company that was founded in 1992 with the aim of researching and creating robotic technology. Of course, with the amount of AI and cyborgs we have in the world today, everyone is well aware of the work that B-Dynamic has done now. But back then, this was only the beginning. After many years of success, creating some of the most advanced robots that humankind has ever seen, B-Dynamic was ready to move into human trials with very high probabilities of success. And in my opinion, they were very cunning with their approach. They no longer wanted to quietly work behind the scenes to the knowledge of only a few thousand people. They wanted to take the world by storm and show everybody what they could do. So, instead of taking random Joe from No Name Street Hospital to work on in private, they approached high-profile people to take on this future technology. Celebrities, athletes, well-known military personnel, heck, they even got a former president on board. There were very few people who weren't excited about the prospect of becoming a cyborg. And Lance Frisco was one of those people. He knew the situation that he was in, and if something wasn't done fast, he may never get to use his right arm again. B-Dynamic went to work. They first started small, focusing mainly on the destroyed shoulder of Frisco, implementing metal and wires far beyond my understanding, but it wasn't working. The pain management, Frisco said at the time, was a godsend. Whatever they connected to his nerves completely made that go away, but he wasn't getting the full use out of his arm. So, a conversation was had, and a decision was made. And it wasn't long before the whole arm was replaced with what we were all first introduced to at FaMniversary. The engineering of the arm was beautiful, not only in the way that it perfectly attached to Frisco, but also in the way that he was able to maneuver the limb with ease. It was very clear that he was in complete control of this one. And he showed us just that, as he went down to the ring and successfully reclaimed his place in FAM by defeating Darren Dastardly. Frisco was on top of the world. He had been given a new lease on life with the enhancements that he had got from B-Dynamic, and now his career was ready to reach new heights as well. But despite that, Frisco handed in his resignation the following day. Many things were offered to Frisco to try and persuade him to stay, even an FAM Global Championship match at the next event. But he wasn't interested. Frisco wanted to walk away. As for the reasons why Frisco wanted to leave FAM, no one really knows. Some thought it was the chaos of the movement that drove him away. Others believed that it was the fact that he had gone through so much in such a short amount of time. But whatever the case was, Frisco moved on, and no one really knew where he went from there. Until now. On On October 8th, 2017, one day after his match with Darren Dastardly, was Frisco's last official day as an FAM superstar. FaMniversary had taken place in his hometown of New York, and so, when it was over, he hopped on the subway and headed home. He spent the next few months living a pretty normal life, catching up with family and old friends, just making the most out of what he had. The holiday season had come and gone, and the life that he used to live was surely something in the past now. Then, about 6 months later, on a blistering New York City summer's day, the doorbell to Frisco's mother's apartment rang. Frisco was the one to answer the door, and there in front of him stood a face that he recognized. For it was the same face that had placed the cybernetic arm onto him in the first place. He invited Frisco for a coffee just down the street so that they could have a chance to talk. This man had already walked into Frisco's life once and completely changed it, and he was about to do it again. He didn't take long to cut to the chase, as he advised Frisco that B-Dynamic would be taking the next steps in furthering their cyborg technology. He said that the company had recently been purchased by a team of people and was now under new management. And this new board of directors had a keen interest in making sure this technology was developed as fast and efficiently as possible. And that's exactly why they wanted to talk to Frisco. And not just him, but anyone who had already been enhanced in the past by B-Dynamic, as they felt it'd be easier to get those people on board and pick up where they left off. Frisco was hesitant at first, unsure if this was something he wanted to go through with. The only reason he accepted the initial enhancement was because he was going to lose his arm without it. He doesn't need what B-Dynamic is offering now, but something about his complexion screamed intrigue. Reluctantly, Frisco agrees and heads back home to pack his bags, ready to make his way to the new B-Dynamic robotics lab in London. 2 weeks later, Frisco arrives in sunny England, his new home for the foreseeable future. He and a handful of other volunteers make their way over to the laboratory for an induction day, where they pass through dense layers of security before reaching their meeting destination. It was here that they met the business tycoons that had purchased B-Dynamic, all 5 of them being very familiar faces to the part Cyborg volunteers. The entrepreneurs introduced themselves to the group and informed the participants that each of them have very different reasons for part purchasing B-Dynamic. The owner of Walmart was there, for example, interested in the technology for the purposes of running his stores. And then there was a private military contractor, pretty obvious what he's interested in it for, and among them was one guy who wasn't interested in the technology for fighting wars or making customers' lives easier. He was interested in this technology for entertainment. The participants were then split into groups, and it was quickly understood that Frisco was in a group all by himself, under the tycoon who favoured entertainment over anything else. Whereas the rest of the businessmen took their volunteers on a tour of the lab, this tycoon instead took Frisco for dinner. He wanted to get to know the man who was about to potentially put his life on the line for him. He asked Frisco why he was here and why he came back to B-Dynamic after receiving his first enhancement. For a moment, Frisco was stunned, unsure of what to say. And then after a few more moments, he said he wasn't sure. He said that for years, he has spent his adult life searching for something. Searching for meaning. It's something he thought he'd find when he defeated Dastardly at FaMniversary, but alas, he did not. He told the tycoon that the only time in his life where he felt a sense of something bigger than himself was when B-Dynamic slapped a hunk of metal onto his body. He said that at first, he thought it would be a hindrance, not only something that would get in his way, but something that people would look down on him for. But that's not been his experience at all. The arm treated him better in the short time he had had it compared to the years he spent with his real arm. And anyone on the street who caught a glimpse of it thought it was the coolest thing in the world, like he's a real-life superhero or something. Long story short, Frisco felt as if the arm was the best thing that had ever happened to him. It brought him peace, where he didn't even realize there was turmoil. And the idea of getting back in the chair and taking on more enhancements, it brought a smile to his face. The tycoon then shared his vision with Frisco. After being in the entertainment industry himself for many, many years, he was looking to start his very own company and raise it from the ground up. But not just any company. He wanted to have an entertainment company that featured nothing but cyborg performers and athletes. A wrestling cyborg entertainment company. Precisely the reason why the tycoon requested Frisco as his volunteer, given his in-ring experience. Then, for the first time throughout this entire process of being reintroduced to B-Dynamic, Frisco didn't hesitate to answer. While looking down at his cyborg arm, Frisco said, "I'm not really sure if wrestling is for me anymore. But if you can give me more of this, I'll wrestle whoever the hell you want." He then extended his cybernetic arm out for a handshake, which the tycoon graciously accepted. The next 4 years of Frisco's life then consisted of 6 days a week of experiments, tests, being taken apart, being put back together, all in the name of science, humankind development, and Frisco's very own search for meaning. In the beginning, the days were drawn out and tough, as everything they did to Frisco's body could be felt throughout. But as time moved on, so did the pain. And as that went away, so did more of his body, replaced by cold, shiny metal and tangled, sprawling wires. It seemed with each part Frisco gained, he was drifting closer and closer to complete internal peace, as the once rightfully nervous man now sat quiet and patiently every day as the technicians worked on him. His day off activities drifted too, where he once took the time to go find something fun and interesting to do. Now he sat meditating for every moment his enhancements would allow him to be awake for. After almost 4 years had passed by, the tycoon returned to the lab to inform Frisco that the results were fantastic. With now over 90% of his body turned from human flesh to cyborg, Frisco's stability levels were off the charts, and he was exceeding all the expectations that had been set for him in physical and combat testing. The tycoon was over the moon and informed Frisco that later in the year, the first ever cyborg wrestling event would take place, and Frisco would be returning to America to headline it. Five months later, using assets and connections that the tycoon had acquired from taking over the world's largest wrestling company back in 2018, he built the CWE, Cyborg Wrestling Entertainment, a huge one-night tournament with the possibility of becoming a fully fledged business if the pilot were to go well. 8 different cyborgs entered the tournament. Some of these cyborgs were from B-Dynamic themselves, while the others were from completely different companies. Of course, Frisco sat in this tournament as the odds-on favourite to win, after the amount of time and effort that had been put into him during the last 4 years. Frisco and the rest of the B-Dynamic team boarded a private jet in the early hours of a Friday morning in June 2022, headed back to the last place Frisco competed in a wrestling match, his hometown, New York City, the host of CWE. After a weekend of press events showing off the glory of the cyborgs to the media, Frisco and the rest of the competitors got ready for Sunday's tournament. With 8 people in the bracket, it meant the victor of the tournament would go through 3 different matches to reach the end. Round 1 began, and in it, 6 different cyborgs had 3 pretty good matches that had people captivated with the extra level of competition that the enhancements brought to the match. However, when it came to the final match of round 1, that didn't end up being the case, as when Frisco entered this match, less than 30 seconds later, his opponent had had his arm ripped out of his socket, had been hit across the head with it, and pinned in the middle of the ring. 1, 2, 3. What had started as an excited and electric crowd quickly turned into a shocked and frightened one, as they all looked on in horror at the way Frisco had just won his match before leaving the ring like nothing happened. The Tycoon grabbed hold of Frisco and pulled him to one side when he entered the gorilla position, telling him he needed to bring it down a few levels. Frisco nodded before continuing past. Spoiler alert, just to save you all the torture of reliving the same thing another 2 times. But that's exactly what happened. Frisco went out there, destroyed his opponents in the least entertaining way possible, flattening them in less than 30 seconds each time, horrifying the crowd and enraging the Tycoon in the process. Frisco stood at the end of the tournament with a trail of bodies along his path as its winner, to a sea of boos from the crowd in attendance. Needless to say, this wasn't the introduction to the world that the CWE had been hoping for, and before it could even get off the ground, the Tycoon announced that it would not be moving forward and ending with the pilot. A few days passed by, and a meeting is called back in the B Dynamic lab in London between Frisco and the Tycoon. The Tycoon asked Frisco why the event went down the way it did, and in more words than this, he basically told him that if they create an instrument of destruction, why are they surprised when he causes destruction? His point was, whether it was him or someone else, eventually, someone given this kind of power is going to use it for whatever means they feel necessary. Frisco felt fortunate that it was him in this position, so that he could use the opportunity to at least implement some warning to the world. But the Tycoon, he didn't see eye to eye. And after some back and forths, the two came to a mutual parting of ways. Frisco vowed to put himself into a deep sleep using his enhancements until such a day in which he felt the world was ready for him. And the Tycoon, he focused all his attention on another wrestling promotion that he was trying to get off the ground in the UK. A deal was made, however. The Tycoon was still the one who provided Frisco with the opportunity to become enhanced to the level he was, and since Frisco failed to help launch the CWE, the Tycoon made Frisco promise that at any time he could wake him up for one task of the Tycoon's choosing. Wait a minute. Is someone coming? Oh my god. That's Lance Frisco! What is he doing here? What is Frisco doing out here? Ah! What is that dreadful noise? Oh my god! I think Frisco just hit Daro with a sonic blast! To daze and confuse him so that he can attack! And now he has those steel stairs in hand! Stalking over Jimmy Daro! Oh my god! What are we witnessing? Oh my lord! Get off of him! Oh my god! He just tore open the scar from Unleashed! Ah, and he just takes Daro's head off with that clothesline! Oh no, what is he doing with the Lionheart Championship? Oh no, Daro! Look out! Oh! And just like that, leaving as quick as he arrives. Unprovoked. Relentless assault against our world champion. But what was the meaning of this? Why would Frisco do that? Now, with Frisco once again being awake, I think it's clear the Tycoon is looking to claim a debt. But what does that mean for the rest of humankind?